Welcome, everyone, to Easy History Podcast. Today, we're going for a deep dive into ancient Rome.
Ooh, ancient Rome.
Specifically, its birth and how it grew from a single city to, well, an empire.
Sound ambitious.
It is. You might think you know this story, but trust me,
Oh, I bet there are.
there are twists and turns you wouldn't believe.
It's like a season finale where you think you know who's going to win.
Right.
And then bam, plot twist.
Yeah.
Rome's rise wasn't inevitable. It was a mix of clever strategy, some lucky breaks.
Oh, yeah.
And some pretty cutthroat moves, really.
Okay, so before we get to the gladiators and emperors,
And
all pictures,
everyone loves gladiators.
let's rewind a bit.
Right.
What was Italy even like before Rome was calling the shots?
Imagine Italy as this patchwork quilt of different cultures.
Okay.
Not a unified country at all.
So not like it is today.
Nope, not at all. Up north, you had the Terramare people, and get this.
What?
They were literally building their homes on stilts over water.
On stilts.
Talk about waterfront property, huh?
That's wild.
They were skilled farmers, craftspeople, signs of a pretty advanced society for the time.
So were there other groups like that around?
Oh, yeah. Further south, you had the Villanovans.
Okay.
These guys were like metalworking masters. We're talking intricate bronze and iron pieces.
Wow.
Way ahead of the curve. So Italy was already this melting pot of innovation even before the Romans showed up.
So there's all this activity going on, and then along come the Etruscans, right?
The Etruscans.
They've always seemed kind of mysterious to me. What impact did they have?
Okay, so think of the Etruscans as the influencers Rome followed before it got famous, right?
Okay.
They built these powerful city-states in central Italy
Uh-huh.
with art that was vibrant, engineering that was mind-blowing,
Right.
and religious practices that were totally unique. They were trendsetters, influencing early Roman culture.
In what way?
In everything, from city planning to religious rituals, fashion, even togas.
Hold on. Togas came from the Etruscans.
Yep.
I always thought those were pure Roman. What else did they get from the Etruscans?
Oh, a lot. The Etruscans were like that friend who's always ahead of the curve,
Right.
showing you cool new things.
Yeah.
They introduced things like chariot racing, gladiatorial combat, things that would later become staples of Roman entertainment. They even had a big impact on Rome's infrastructure. Think paved streets, drainage systems, imposing temples, things that made Rome, Rome.
So not just culture, but the literal foundations of a city.
Yeah.
That's a huge legacy. But was it just the Etruscans that made Italy the place where an empire could rise?
Well, geography played a huge role, too.
Oh.
The Italian peninsula was like winning the location lottery, fertile land, perfect for agriculture, slap bang in the middle of the Mediterranean, great for trade and naval power.
Yeah.
Plus, loads of natural resources, like iron and timber, essential for building an empire, both economically and militarily.
Okay, so we've got this cultural mix, the Etruscan influence, a location that's prime real estate.
Prime real estate.
Sounds like the stage is set for Rome's entrance.
All right, bring on the Romans.
Now tell me about this legendary founding Romulus, Remus, the she-wolf.
Classic.
Was any of that real?
Well, the story of Romulus and Remus, that's like Rome's origin story, a myth.
Right.
Shaped their identity.
Yeah.
Two brothers, abandoned, rescued by a she-wolf, destined to found a great city. It's powerful stuff, even if it's more symbolic than historical fact.
I get that, but is there any evidence at all from that time period? Like, did people actually live where Rome is around, 753 BC?
That's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
While the twins and the wolf are probably a later invention, archaeologists have actually found traces of settlements on Palatine Hill.
That's one of the 7 hills of Rome, right?
That's right, one of the 7 hills of Rome, dating back to the 8th century BC. So there were definitely villages popping up around the time Rome is said to have been founded.
So there might be a grain of truth hiding in that legend.
Maybe.
A real history behind the myth. So these villages, they eventually became Rome, but it wasn't an empire right away, right? Didn't they have kings first?
You're right, for over 2 centuries, Rome was ruled by kings.
Huh.
Some, like Numa Pompilius, are credited with establishing Rome's religious institutions and laws, while others, like Servius Tullius, reformed the army and social structure.
So they were busy.
Oh, yeah, they weren't just sitting around waiting for an empire to happen. They were laying the groundwork.
And did any of these early kings start expanding Rome's territory, or was that a later thing?
Rome started, flexing its muscles a bit under the monarchy, expanding its influence locally, but it was during the Republic that they really went from small town to regional powerhouse.
Okay, hold up. before we get to the Republic, I've got to know more about those Etruscan kings.
More about the Etruscans.
They seem like they were more than just figureheads. Did they have a lasting impact on Rome's development?
Oh, absolutely. They weren't just rulers, they were builders. The Cloaca Maxima, Rome's massive sewer system,
Oh, yeah.
that was their doing.
Really?
Can you imagine Rome without it?
I don't even want to.
It would have been a very different and much smellier city. They also brought their own cultural flair, those chariot races and gladiatorial combats we talked about. That was their influence too.
Wow, they really left their mark.
Yeah.
But all good things must come to an end, right? What happened to the monarchy? Was it a peaceful transition to a republic or something a bit more dramatic?
Well, Roman society wasn't as harmonious as it might seem on the surface.
I see.
There was a growing divide between the patricians,
The wealthy landowner?
yep, the wealthy landowners, and the plebeians, the common folk.
Right.
Resentment was brewing against the Etruscan king, Tarquinius Superbus,
Okay.
who was seen as a tyrant. Things came to a head in 509 BC when he was overthrown, kicking off the Roman Republic.
Okay, so that's the end of the monarchy. But how did this republic even work? Was it like a democracy?
The Roman Republic was a complicated beast,
Oh, I bet.
a mix of elected officials, assemblies, and the Senate.
Okay.
Imagine a system where civic duty, military strength, and the rule of law were king.
Interesting.
The Senate, made up of experienced elder statesmen, held a lot of sway, advising magistrates and shaping policy.
So not a monarchy, but not a free-for-all either. Did this new system help them as they started expanding their territory?
It definitely played a role.
Okay.
The Republic, fueled by a sense of shared purpose and a well-oiled military machine, embarked on a serious expansion spree.
It's amazing to think they went from a city-state to controlling such a huge chunk of land.
I don't know, right?
Where did they even start? Did they just decide to conquer Italy, or was it more gradual?
Rome wasn't about to bite off more than it could chew.
Good strategy.
Their first conquests were against neighboring tribes in central Italy, like the Sabines and Latins. It's like they were building a power base, solidifying their control before venturing further afield.
So they were strategic about it. And then, of course, came the Punic Wars against Carthage.
Yeah.
Everyone's heard about Hannibal and his elephants crossing the Alps.
Talk about an entrance.
Can you give us the rundown on these epic battles?
Okay, so the Punic Wars were a clash of civilizations,
Okay.
a real turning point in the Mediterranean. Carthage, based in North Africa, was a major power, and they weren't going to just let Rome waltz in and take over.
Of course not.
These wars were fueled by economic rivalry, territorial ambition, and a good old-fashioned dose of animosity.
So it was a fight for who was going to run the show in the Mediterranean, who threw the first punch.
Well, the First Punic War kicked off in 264 BC over control of Sicily,
Sicily.
a strategically important island. Now, Rome wasn't exactly known for its navy at this point.
Really?
They were landlubbers, but they knew they had to adapt, so they built a fleet to challenge Carthage's dominance at sea.
Wait, so the Romans, famous for their legions and land battles, had to become, what, expert sailors? That's quite a change of pace.
It is.
How they managed that?
Necessity is the mother of invention, right? They came up with new tactics, like using a boarding bridge called a corvus to grapple enemy ships.
A corvus.
Basically, it was like turning a naval battle into a land battle, which played to their strengths.
Real smart.
It was a brutal war, but Rome emerged victorious, taking control of Sicily and becoming a legitimate naval power in the process.
That's impressive. They really learned to swim when thrown into the deep end. But this was just round one, right?
Oh, yeah, there were 3 rounds in this epic showdown. The Second Punic War, and arguably the most famous, started in 218 BC with Hannibal's audacious invasion of Italy. This guy marched his army, including war elephants, across the Alps in winter.
I can't even imagine trying to get a dog to cross the Alps, let alone an elephant.
Right. It was a logistical nightmare and a military masterstroke all rolled into one.
What happened when Hannibal got to Italy? Did he manage to conquer Rome?
Well, Hannibal inflicted some devastating defeats on the Romans,
Oof.
most notably at Cannae in 216 BC. That battle is still studied today for its tactical brilliance. Hannibal was a genius, no doubt.
Right.
But despite these victories, he couldn't take Rome itself. The city's defenses held, and the Romans, true to form, refused to give up.
So Rome held strong, but at a cost, right? These wars must have been brutal.
They were a turning point for Rome, but they came at a heavy price.
Yeah.
Both sides suffered massive losses, resources were drained, and the psychological scars lingered. But they also showed the world just how tenacious and resilient the Romans could be.
From fighting local rivals to facing down Hannibal, it sounds like Roman expansion was a wild ride.
It was.
But with Carthage out of the picture, did they finally get some peace and quiet? Or was there more trouble brewing?
Well, even as Rome was conquering left and right, trouble was brewing back home. Internal pressures were starting to crack the foundation of the Republic. It's like they were winning the game but losing themselves in the process. And this internal struggle would eventually lead to the end of the Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire.
Ooh, cliffhanger. That's a story for part 2.
Coming soon.
But before we go, I want to know, what were these internal pressures that were building? What caused Rome to turn on itself after all it had achieved?
Oh, well, you know how some bands have that difficult second album?
Oh, yeah, I get that.
Well, the Roman Republic had a difficult second century.
Oh, I see what you mean.
As they conquered more land, the social and economic balance back home, it started to crumble.
So it wasn't just barbarians at the gates, but problems brewing from within. What went wrong?
Okay, imagine you're a Roman citizen, right? You own a small farm.
Okay.
Suddenly, your neighbor, who's gotten rich off, war loot, is buying up all the land around you, working it with slaves. You can't compete, so you're forced to sell, maybe even move to the city to find work. That happened a lot, leading to massive inequality.
That's rough. So all this conquest was actually making life worse for some Romans back home. I bet that didn't go over well.
It was like a pressure cooker. The gap between the rich and the poor, it grew into a chasm. And the people who'd always been Rome's backbone, the farmers, the soldiers, they were getting squeezed out.
It's not good.
That breeds resentment.
Yeah.
And resentment breeds instability.
So did anyone try to fix this? Surely someone saw what was happening and tried to, put on the brakes.
There were those who tried to sound the alarm. The Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, they were reformers.
Oh.
They wanted to, redistribute land to the poor, give them a chance. They saw the writing on the wall and tried to change course.
Good for them. What happened? Did their reforms work?
Their ideas were pretty radical for the time.
I bet.
And they threatened the power of the wealthy elite. Tragically, both brothers were assassinated.
Oh, wow.
Their deaths were a sign that the system, well, it was breaking down. Violence became the answer to political disagreements.
That's a scary thought. So, with all this chaos, is that when powerful generals like Julius Caesar enter the picture, the whole crossing the Rubicon moment?
Exactly. This instability, it created the perfect conditions for ambitious figures like Caesar to rise to power. He was a brilliant military commander and a shrewd politician, conquering Gaul, expanding Rome's territory. He returned to Rome a hero, but his popularity, his power, it made the Senate very, very nervous.
Okay, so Caesar's back in Rome, he's popular, he's powerful, and the Senate's freaking out. What happened next? Did he just march in and take over?
It's 49 BC, tension is at a boiling point. Caesar, defying the Senate, he crosses the Rubicon River with his legions.
The Rubicon.
This was a declaration of war. It plunged the Republic into civil war.
Wow.
A conflict that would last for years. And guess who emerged victorious?
Let me guess. Caesar. So at this point, is the Republic basically over?
Caesar's victory was the nail in the coffin for the Republic. He became dictator.
A dictator.
Centralizing power, sidelining the Senate. He implemented a lot of reforms, but his reign was short-lived.
What happened?
In 44 BC, he was assassinated. By a group of senators who feared his ambition. It was a dramatic end to a dramatic life.
Talk about a plot twist.
Okay.
Assassinated by his own people. So what happened to Rome after Caesar? Did the Republic try to reboot, or was it just game over?
Caesar's assassination plunged Rome into another civil war.
Another then.
A power struggle that would decide the fate of the empire. His adopted son, Octavian, he eventually came out on top.
Octavian.
Defeating rivals like Mark Antony and Cleopatra. He was a brilliant strategist and politician, just like his father.
Octavian. Didn't he become Augustus, the first Roman emperor? So this is where the Republic officially ends and the Roman Empire begins.
Ego. Octavian. He took the name Augustus, a title that meant, revered or sacred. He was smart, presenting himself as a restorer of peace and traditional values, while quietly consolidating power into his own hands. And so began the Roman Empire, ushering in a new era of Roman history.
So, the Roman Republic, despite all its achievements, ultimately succumb to the pressures from within. It's a reminder that even the most successful systems could be fragile if they don't adapt and address their internal problems.
It's fascinating, isn't it? This period of Roman history, it's full of drama, intrigue, larger-than-life characters.
Yeah.
But beyond the emperors and generals, there were millions of ordinary people living their lives, experiencing this tumultuous time firsthand. What was it like to be a Roman citizen during these times of change and upheaval?
That's a great question. It's easy to get caught up in the big events, but what about the everyday lives of the people who lived through them? What were their beliefs, their customs, their struggles? What did it mean to be Roman?
That's where we delve into the heart of Roman society, a world as diverse and complex as the empire itself. And that's a story for our next part.
Welcome back to Easy History Podcast. We've seen how Rome rose from a humble city-state to a powerful empire. But what about the people who lived through these dramatic changes? Let's explore what it meant to be Roman beyond the togas and the legions.
Roman society, was built on this foundation of family.
Family.
But it wasn't the kind of family we might picture today.
How so?
The paterfamilias, the oldest male, he held absolute authority over, well, everyone in the household.
So a pretty patriarchal system then. What kind of power are we talking about here?
The paterfamilias, he controlled everything. Finances, property, even the lives of his children and wife.
Wow.
He could arrange marriages, decide on careers,
Right.
and even, in extreme cases, punish family members with death. Sounds harsh.
Yeah.
But it was all about maintaining order and upholding tradition.
Wow. That's a lot of responsibility.
It is.
And a lot of power. What about the women? What were their role?
Roman women, they were expected to be wives and mothers, first and foremost.
Yeah.
They managed the household, raised the children, and played, a crucial role in upholding family honor and traditions.
Okay, but their lives weren't entirely confined to the home.
Definitely not. While they couldn't vote or hold public office, some women, especially those from, wealthy families, wielded significant influence behind the scenes.
I see.
They could advise their husbands on political matters, manage businesses, and even own property in their own right.
It sounds like Roman women, despite the limitations, they found ways to make their voices heard. What about the children? What was it like growing up Roman?
Children, especially sons, they were seen as like a continuation of the family line and its legacy. Education was highly valued, even for girls.
Oh, interesting.
Although their education focused on domestic skills, preparing them for marriage,
Makes sense.
boys from wealthy families received a more rigorous education, studying rhetoric, philosophy, and history.
So even back then, education was seen as a pathway to success. But Roman society wasn't all about family and education, was it? They had a reputation for enjoying life's pleasures. What did Romans do for fun?
The Romans knew how to have a good time.
I bet they did.
Public entertainment was a huge part of Roman culture. We're talking gladiatorial combats,
Of course.
chariot races, theatrical performances,
Okay.
even public executions.
Gladiators and chariots, that's what everyone pictures when they think of Rome. But wasn't it all a bit, brutal? Was violence just part of their entertainment?
The Roman attitude towards violence was complex.
Okay.
It was a society that glorified military strength, so it's not surprising that their entertainment reflected that. But these spectacles, they were more than just blood sport. They were also about spectacle, drama, and social connection.
So like a mix of like sporting event and reality TV.
Kind of, yeah.
Was this kind of entertainment just for the masses, or did the elites enjoy it too?
These events, they transcended social class. Imagine massive amphitheaters like the Colosseum, packed with people from all walks of life, cheering on their favorite gladiators or, charioteers.
Yeah.
It was a shared experience, a way to escape the daily grind and feel connected to something bigger than themselves.
Okay, I can see the appeal, even if it's a bit bloodthirsty. Were there more refined forms of entertainment for those who weren't so keen on the violence?
Absolutely. The Romans, they loved theater, music, and poetry.
Okay.
Public readings, philosophical debates, even dinner parties with, music and dancing were popular forms of entertainment.
So they had a sophisticated side too. What about food? What do the Romans eat? Did they have like a signature dish?
Roman cuisine was surprisingly diverse, influenced by, the many cultures they encountered through conquest and trade. Think exotic spices from the East. fruits and vegetables from North Africa, and of course, plenty of olive oil and wine.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah.
So what was a typical Roman meal like?
For most Romans, bread was a staple,
Okay.
often dipped in olive oil and vinegar or accompanied by cheese, olives, and fruits.
Sounds simple.
They also ate a lot of legumes like lentils and beans and cooked with garum.
Garum, what's that?
It's a fermented fish sauce that added a savory punch to their dishes.
Garum. That sounds a bit intense. What
Okay.
about the wealthy? I bet they had some pretty lavish feasts.
Oh, yeah, the Roman elite knew how to throw a party.
I bet they did.
Their feasts could last for hours, with multiple courses featuring, exotic meats, seafood, elaborate pastries, and of course, plenty of wine.
So the Roman Empire, it wasn't all togas and gladiators. There was family, food, entertainment, and even a bit of intellectual stimulation. But there's one big piece of the puzzle we haven't talked about yet: religion. What did Romans believe in, and how did religion influence their lives?
Roman religion, it was a mix of practicality and tradition. They were polytheistic,
I mean,
meaning they believed in many gods.
okay,
Each god had a specific role, like Jupiter, the king of the gods,
okay.
or Mars, the god of war.
So it was like having a god for every occasion. Did they build temples, make sacrifices?
Temples were central to Roman religious life. They were grand structures dedicated to specific gods and goddesses. Priests conducted rituals and sacrifices, seeking the favor of the gods for everything from good harvests to, military victories.
Yeah.
Religion, it was woven into the fabric of daily life.
Was everyone expected to follow the same gods, or was there room for, different beliefs?
The Romans were generally tolerant of other religions as long as they didn't, challenge the authority of the state. But there was one faith that would eventually transform the Roman world: Christianity.
Ah, Christianity.
Mhm.
From a small persecuted sect to the official religion of the Roman Empire. That's quite a journey. How did that happen?
The rise of Christianity is a fascinating story, one of faith, resilience, and political maneuvering.
Yeah.
Early Christians, they were often persecuted, seen as a threat to the Roman order, but their message of love, compassion, and the promise of salvation, it resonated with many, especially those who felt marginalized by Roman society.
It's interesting how a message of peace and humility could spread within an empire built on military might. What role did the Roman emperors play in all this?
At first, the emperors tried to suppress Christianity,
Okay.
but in the early 4th century AD, Emperor Constantine, he converted to Christianity, a turning point that changed the course of history. He issued the Edict of Milan in 313 AD,
The Edict of Milan.
granting religious tolerance throughout the empire. This paved the way for Christianity to become the dominant religion of the Roman world.
So from persecution to acceptance, Christianity's journey in the Roman Empire was a dramatic one. It's amazing to think how much ground we've covered, from the founding of Rome to the rise and fall of the Republic, and now this glimpse into the lives of the Roman people. What's the key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
Rome's legacy, it's vast and complex. They achieved incredible things.
Yeah.
In art, architecture, law, engineering, things we still benefit from today. But their story, it's also a cautionary tale about the dangers of, unchecked power and the importance of addressing social inequalities.
It's a reminder that even the mightiest empires are built on a foundation of people, with all their complexities, their triumphs, and their flaws. Exploring their world, it helps us understand our own a little better. So to our listeners, I encourage you to continue your own explorations of ancient Rome. Dig deeper into the stories that fascinate you, and you'll discover a world that's both familiar and surprisingly different from our own. Until next time, keep exploring the past because it holds the keys to understanding the present and shaping the future.